the bottom line, you want to get in to the tournament. Now, obviously, there are years where teams that get into the tournament don't belong in the tournament. And this year, will Tampa Bay be one of those teams? Because when you look at it, the Green Bay Packers are playing a better they are playing much better than when they played Tampa Bay before. New Orleans is playing much better than when they played Green Bay. I mean, so when you start to look at some of these teams, they're playing better than they've played before, where Tampa Bay all of a sudden seems like to me they're playing not as good as they were before. So it's just a matter of what happens in Minnesota. And I could promise you Mike Zimmer is going to try and dial it up from a defensive standpoint to take away those weapons that you mentioned that Tom Brady has aligned himself with. And then we'll see how that game goes. Kirk Cousins has been up and down, but more times than not in certain situations he's been up.
I mean, you can question the defense. What happened to this potent defense that we had talked about at the beginning of the year? And also, Key, you would know this better than I would, but it seems like their offense is one-dimensional, right? Like when Ronald Jones rushes for over 100 yards in the 4 games he's been able to do that, they're 3-1. But when they abandon the run game, Tom has been extremely inefficient at throwing the ball down the field, and it seems like it just becomes way more predictable of an offense. And then we get into, well, how many times is he targeting Antonio Brown as opposed to Evans and all these other conversations that we're in. But the fact is, that's never been Tom's game.
Well, there's a couple things that happens when you go away from running the ball. You fall from behind. Also, the defense may dictate to you that you have to throw the ball and not run it. Now, I've always been a huge component of attempts. I don't care about yards. I care about attempts. Attempting to run is more important to me than the yards because it sets everything else up if I want to throw the football. It allows the defensive backs to be on their toes. It allows the linebackers to freeze up, and now you can get behind them. They don't necessarily get to their drops. And when teams don't run the ball or even attempt to run the ball, the pass game doesn't work either because guys are just dropping because they know you're not going to run the ball. So I think, though, for Tampa Bay, because there was so much put on Tom Brady going to Tampa and the expectations being so high because the great Tom Brady is coming to town. We're going to win a Super Bowl. We're going to be the first team in the history of the NFL to play in our own stadium for the Super Bowl. All those expectations. Helicopters hovering over off-season conditioning and practices with his teammates.
Tampa Bay,
jerseys. And so much was made of it. It's almost like a downer and a disappointment because they're not in the first or the second position within the conference. And they very well could lose to Minnesota or very well could not find themselves in the playoffs.
Let me ask you this, Jay. Because of who Brady is, I've heard a lot of other people on ESPN and other sports networks essentially what Arian said, even though strangely he wouldn't actually finish the sentence, be that as it may. There are many people that simply believe we got 12. I don't care what the regular season looks like. They rode off the Pats 6 years ago when they lost that disastrous game to the Chiefs. All this stuff. We got 12, and when it matters, who's better than 12?
I mean, that sounds like the right thing to say when you think about Tom Brady. But I think how you utilize Tom Brady is important too, and the assets around him. I think that's something that's so imperative when you think about Byron Leftwich, when you think about Bruce Arians, and how they're utilizing Tom Brady. How you use him means a lot.
And when you say we have 12, that is true. If I was on a team, I'd say, hey, we have 12. But guess what? You've had 12 during the regular season in certain situations. And 12 ain't been 12.
That's true.
So 12 was 12 in the regular season with Bill Belichick and what Josh McDaniels was doing with him for 20 years with Charlie Weiss and Bill O'Brien and Josh McDaniels along with Bill Belichick. 12 has been 12 in the regular season. He has not been the 12 that we saw in Boston. Doesn't mean if they make it to the playoffs, all of a sudden,
boom,
like that,
he doesn't turn on the switch. Doesn't mean that. But you got to get to the playoffs. And right now you're sitting at 7-5 in the number 6 seed. All of a sudden you could drop out of that 6 and fall to 10. Now what?
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.